It's time for more Truck Driver. I loved playing this game from Soedesco on my Switch, so I decided why not play it on the Steam Deck as well. It is a bit of a puzzle for why you'd play this sort of game on PC when you have the likes of American Truck Simulator and European Truck Sim available. But it's there, and for far cheaper than the Switch's original launch price of $50. So let's dive right into it. Here is how I've gotten Soedesco's Truck Driver to run on the original Steam Deck. For a bit of a summary, Truck Driver is a semi-truck simulator about driving in a European landscape, doing jobs for a few clients that your uncle owns. You deliver loads for them across a small variety of cab-over trucks and a few more in the Heading North DLC with a more Nordic theme to it. Again, you're only doing cab-over trucks since this is based off of European and not American trucks. So don't expect to see any of the trucks that have a quote-unquote nose to them. This game isn't as crazy in depth as the likes of ATS and ETS, but it has a great accurate cabin view, and cruise control helps it be a very laid-back game of just enjoying the drive. With running this game on the original Steam Deck, you don't have a huge amount of standard settings, but the game can run smoothly on Valve's handheld. When you first boot it up, the settings are a little weird. There are no presets for low, medium, and high. You have resolution, window mode, VSync, and a bunch of effects like shadows, grass, ambient occlusion, bloom, anti-aliasing, and light render distance. The closest you get to a preset is LOD, or level of detail. But even that doesn't really do much in terms of performance when you change it. In fact, almost all of these settings don't do much in terms of performance when they're tweaked. So leaving everything at its default level, the performance is actually pretty good at the start. If you use the first person or cabin views, you'll begin getting a nice and smooth ranged frame rate between 55 and 60. The frame rate sticks up here for pretty much the entire game, at least until you decide to change the camera angle. If you go into the third person view, showing the truck itself in front of the camera, the frame rate drops. It then becomes a range between 39 and 60, often around the 40s and 50s. I found this a bit interesting, as while the Nintendo Switch version of this game is locked to 30 FPS, that version didn't have that big of a performance drop between those two camera angles. Now, like I said before, most of the settings don't really do anything when you tweak them, but one of them does. The culprit of the performance issues is one of the very bottom options in settings called Truck Reflection. Turn that off and your FPS will spike from the 40s all the way up to 60. It's that big of a difference. Now, at first, I thought it was this feature along with headlight shadows, but when you only disable reflection, it makes a gigantic difference in frame rate. This turned the main game's map for me into a 55 to 60 FPS adventure regardless of what camera angle you decide to go with. Now, I personally have always loved this game's cab view, and it's pretty much the only truck sim that I like to default to cab view instead of third person. But the frame rate stays nice and smooth with these settings no matter what you choose. It's a great feeling, especially if you come from the Switch version, which is good in its own right, but when you have the high level of detail to really enjoy the environments without the low res textures and pop-in, it's just a great experience. But the Heading North DLC map is another story. When I reviewed that DLC on Switch a few days ago, I noted that the settlement areas of that map created a lot of frame drops, and it does the same thing here. With our settings that created 55 to 60 FPS in the main game, will drop to 36 to 60 FPS in the DLC map. Again, this is only during the densely populated areas with a lot of buildings around, but it will drop to these levels when you're in those locations, and just like with the Switch version, the moment you go to those outdoor highways, it'll go right back up to being smooth. Unfortunately, the truck reflection feature seems to be the only thing that changes performance outside of washing out the way the game looks by dropping the resolution. So you're going to have these 40 to 60 frame rate ranges while trekking through the settlements of the DLC. Not that it's a horrible thing, and you'll never drop down to 30 or below. But because of this, here are my recommended settings for Truck Driver on the Steam Deck. Like we spoke about earlier, I would leave everything as it is except for disabling truck reflection. Turn that off, lock the Steam Deck down to 40 FPS or 30 if you're okay with that, and you'll be able to play this game just fine. It's not 60 FPS, but keeping it at 40 will maintain that frame rate pretty much everywhere this truck sim takes you, and you won't have that 20 FPS difference when moving from the main game to the DLC map. That's it for performance, so let's quickly talk about battery life. On the original Steam Deck, Truck Driver should last you around 2.5 hours on a single charge. Now, as we wrap this up, would I recommend Truck Driver to Steam Deck users? I'd say yes. Granted, if you want the best truck sim on PC, you want to go for ATS or ETS. But if you want something outside of that, this is a fun and casual truck sim, and you can get a nice 40 FPS consistently across both the main game and DLC, and a good 60 just in the main game. And that's all I have for you today. I'll be back soon with more Steam Deck performance videos and Nintendo Switch reviews. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.